Now, on BBC Two, Brian Redhead presents the last in the series that examines some of the implications of the new technological revolution, managing the micro.
200 years ago, almost everyone worked on the land, with only a few workers in industry and a few clerks in offices. 100 years ago, agriculture was becoming mechanized and industry had overtaken it as the major source of employment. As the demand for manufactured goods rose, so more and more people worked in factories. During the last 50 years, industrial employment shrunk. The growth in service jobs, especially in offices. But now, new technology is changing office work profoundly. And whereas an agricultural worker or an industrial worker is surrounded by between 6,000 and 10,000 pounds worth of equipment, the average secretary or the average manager even probably only have about a few £100 worth between them. Of course, a lot of office work is to do with judgment or is dealing with information that is vague and imprecise. It's the way that human beings work, you know, the sort of thing. We had a letter from, what's his name last week? Can you find it? But where information or skills can be precisely defined, new technology can sweep in and become a highly productive tool. Opening up new opportunities or cutting jobs, it depends upon your point of view. This is a relatively low-cost British microcomputer with a word processing program. And the program is held on a magnetic disc like this, and other discs are used to store information. They are the new filing system. Well, I've been trying it out and discovering some of the many things it can do. Marvelous. You can type a document at the keyboard and edit it, of course, on the screen, insert and delete sections very easily, and then you can print things out very cleanly on a printer without needing correcting fluid. And it's ideal if you want to draft and redraft something or modify a standard document. Then it really can save time because there's no need to retype anything except the changes. But again, human nature being what it is, of course, this can lead to managers making many more drafts and redrafts than before. Parkinson's law. Imagine having to type, for instance, all that again at a narrower width. With the word processor, it's very easy. Here, all I need to do is to remember what codes to type in. Now, the code is Control OL and then 30. And that sets the left-hand margin followed by return. Watch. See, the margin goes to there. And then all I have to type is Control B, and it does the job. And there it is. Magic. Now, with this, I have to learn quite a lot of complex control instructions. I am, as it were, forced to work the machine in exactly the way that it wants. And of course, secretaries using word processors are going to need to be more highly skilled and more highly paid. A recent government report said that word processors need to produce a 50% increase in productivity to justify themselves. And it's only when you use them for the kind of thing I've mentioned that you get that sort of benefit. On the horizon, though, are extensions from the humble word processor to the machines of this kind. Now, this is made by our very own ICL, and it's moving us towards what they call a total information system. This machine will link with other computers down a telephone line and enable you to create, retrieve, and search through great banks of files, either here or at a distance. You can send electronic mail, you can make use of production control programs and financial modeling and so forth. And it can key into data banks like the GPO's Prestel, which was the first among many of these kind of view data things. Watch. All sorts of information punched up in all sorts of different styles and all accessible through the telephone line. Now, the equipment is very impressive. The sales demonstrations are very impressive. But still there are limitations. Modern computers are not very good yet at enabling me to get what I want in a sort of vague human way. And I have with me from ICL, Vic Maller. Now, if I know precisely what I want and can say it in a language the computer understands, easy, yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Do it for me.
Let me show you. My own name and address in the telephone book. I lived in Stevenage, and I put in the town, my name, and the street in which I live.
Yes.
An absolutely precise inquiry. I send it, And the system, of course, comes back with my full name and address and telephone number.
And that wasn't sort of hidden inside, it's actually gone through
No,
the telephone directory?
This is on a computer in Stevenage, and it's on a file provided by the post office.
Right, now suppose I didn't quite know. Suppose I was looking somebody up and I vaguely knew the name and vaguely knew the address, but wasn't very clear. What would it do then?
This is something we can now handle. Hitherto, computers, as I said, could only handle a stylized form of inquiry. And if we were, for example, faced with finding somebody whose name was Mr. Szyszygowski, a Polish name, who lived in southwest London, Draycott Place, Drayton Gardens, I'm not sure which, what would we do? Conventional computer systems would find it very difficult, but we now have techniques which enable us to solve this problem. Let's type in his name, or rather, the first two characters of it. You know he begins SZ, and he has the stem SKI somewhere in that name. He lives in Drayton Gardens, or was it Draycott Place? We're not sure, but DRA should suffice. The only other clue we have is that he lived in London. And if we now send that one, we do indeed find Mr. Szyszygowski in Drayton Gardens.
Right, now suppose we wanted to have a posh party, send out invitations. We thought, let's invite every duke in London. But we couldn't remember who the dukes were.
Let's see if we can find a few of them. Most of them, of course, have ex-directory telephone numbers, but there are a few listed in the London telephone book. Now, if I had known beforehand that you were going to ask me this question, I could have set up indexes to enable me to find it very quickly.
Yeah.
But what you have done is to ask me an ad hoc inquiry. And this is representative of much that happens in commercial data processing. And it is the problem for which current data processing techniques are not really very adequate. They are improving, as I can now show you. The title of the individuals concerned is Duke. So we can just merely type in Duke of in London. And we're now going to search the entire London telephone directory, starting now.
And that's what? All the millions of names? Oh, we've got the first
Somewhere
one.
like a million names.
Duke of Athol. Yes. And it will go through, and every time it sees Duke of, it produces it.
It will produce one, and they'll come back in alphabetical order as they are in the telephone
Now, this
book.
seems to me to have opened up that world. I mean, the world of computers used to be a kind of closed order of monks, and you weren't allowed in, but it does seem now that we can all become members.
That is the intention, certainly. The syndrome of the air-conditioned temple containing the computer, ministered to by a hierarchy of priests and acolytes known as data processing staff, is now beginning to change.
And we're not all going to have to learn a new language in order to join in this.
No, hopefully not. The aim of the operation is to bring computing out to the managing director and a humble man on the shop floor. Flexible, simple and easy, and a very natural extension to his normal tools.
Good, well, thank you very much, you see, because the spread of office automation is not perhaps as fast as it might be, partly because of human reaction to change. Now, let's take the example of the word processor and see how one organization has had to come to terms with the human factor. Bradford City Council learned the hard way about pioneering the word processor.
We had some fairly bitter conflicts, including strikes, and it was from that we learned some very hard lessons.
In 1977, at their Jacobs Well offices, the council set up one of the country's first word processing units as a central service. The clatter and rustle of the typing pool gave way to the more muted clacking of electronic keyboards. It all looks peaceful enough now, but both the council and the union admit that they should have gone about things differently.
I think the mistakes that we made were that we had a well-worked-out idea. The only thing we hadn't done was to work it out with the people affected. And once the idea had matured, we were so anxious to get it in, because it was offered us such potential savings and things, that we became impatient, both of the reaction of staff and the reaction of the trade unions.
The union made mistakes. Our biggest mistake was that we criticised the technical brilliance of the equipment. And we were wrong.
Good afternoon, typists. This is Robert West, Architects Division, Unit B, Wallet 15.
The First Amendment occurs on page 4 of the report, item C, paragraph 3, and on the second line. Please could you omit the word requesting and add back requiring.
One of those who were sceptical at first was Molly Hastings.
Oh, I felt awful. I didn't want to work one at all.
Why not?
Possibly because I was older and I didn't like the thought of changing, and I liked working in the office I was in, with the people I was in, and it meant a lot of people would be leaving. And I think that was why.
But now, if they asked you to go back and use an old typewriter?
No, I wouldn't. No, they're marvellous machines.
It's a fairly standard phenomenon that if you approach anyone with a dramatic change, you'll get a predicted reaction to it. They will not like it. And that doesn't go for word processors, that goes for anybody from the top to the bottom.
Another who has cause to prefer the new system is the word processing manager, Jean Oldfield.
It's made my job easier. There were 3 typing pools in this building on different floors. And I was running up and down, making sure that each pool was working to capacity, transferring work from those who were overloaded, trying to assess the workload of the 3. Now we're centralized. All the work comes in here, all the work comes through me, and I can decide what to do with it. Their work is more varied. The ways in which they do the work is more varied.
If you've got a name in a document and it comes quite a few times and then someone says, oh, you haven't spelt that word correctly, you can tell it to search for the word and it will find it for you. Instead of you having to read through maybe 10 pages, it goes to the word each time.
They can turn out an enormous amount of work with far less effort. Now, we had over 40 typists spread over this building, and now we have 15 doing more work, probably.
And that, of course, is what led to the disputes. But the disputes, in their turn, have led to a technology agreement. On what terms?
The rate for the job would be agreed, that those people who didn't wish to be accommodated on the work processing equipment would be either redeployed or transferred or something with their acceptance, and that particularly that the savings that would accrue must be used in some way that would be job producing. If you like, we would seek. But if we lost jobs in the typing sense, we would create a similar number of posts in some other job. It could be, in fact.
I think it was at that point we achieved the breakthrough, wasn't it, when we accommodated this point about jobs and loss of jobs and is the trade union selling jobs, etc. It was only by having an agreement that talked about job creation, I think, that we began to make progress.
Yes, until we could be satisfied that jobs would be created equal to the number that were at risk, then until then we wouldn't agree.
What we learned, very painfully, was there's no way you're going to introduce new technology without the cooperation of staff and the people who represent them, namely the trade unions. There are 2 very polarised views in the council. One was get ahead, bugger it, get it put in. And the other view, the view that prevailed, was that we'd be stopped, that we'd make no progress. And so it's an illusion if people really think that they can put new technology in without the understanding and agreement of staff. It's just a dream, a pipe dream.
But where will they go next in Bradford? The legal and town planning departments use the new method, and soon education will follow. And there is talk of electronic mail between buildings. But is change inevitable?
This is only the beginning. Eventually, there'll be tremendous centres, all holding information which people can be keyed into. And this is, at the moment, mainly correspondence. But I foresee that it will go a great deal further.
In the next decade, we will expand our role in the world's fast-moving financial market, and we will need a new communications concept.
An advertising film set to sell the idea of the office of the future to the impressionable businessmen of America. Produced a few years ago, its idea of the future is June 1981.
Maintain our lead in the intricate global market is the Integrated Electronic Office.
I'm a Citicorp Senior Vice President. This is my office. Here's how I started my day. When I got in this morning, I turned on the office. When I settled down in my private work area, I started through my incoming mail. I called up the items I wanted to handle on my display screen. On one letter, I typed out a short message and sent the annotated version to my Chief of Staff's electronic inbox. Another memo needed a longer answer. A response to the memo sent by Paul Evans about the upcoming manpower plans. I put the original memo and my dictation into my electronic outbox for my secretary to handle. While I was going through my mail, the phone chimed often. I checked to determine who was calling before I answered. Most of the callers could wait, so I hooked them into an auto-answering program on my computer.
The reality in the firm itself is perhaps not far from the promotional vision, give or take the furnishings. Citibank in New York has installed virtually paperless offices with electronic filing retrieval systems and, of course, electronic mail.
I can draft the memo, have Bob's okay on it, and immediately mail it to California. They'll receive it in about 2 minutes over the telephone lines.
Most significant is the way that the executives do indeed operate the same kinds of machines as their secretaries. The new technology has reached the top. So we've now established 2 points. First, that the new technology is not the sole preserve of the data processing staff, and secondly, that it can spread right through an organization. It's not confined just to the girls in the office. Now, at BL, they're about to introduce a new system called Comet, which even the senior executives will use, and my Colin is here to demonstrate it. Now, what does it do?
Brian, what I've done is to connect this portable terminal through to our computer center at REDHEAD.
Yeah.
And I've asked it to list out all the messages which are waiting for me since the last time I connected this terminal to the system.
And these are genuine messages?
These are genuine messages. And there are 9 messages waiting for me here to have a look at. I don't have to have a look at them all. And in fact, there's one here, in fact, there are 2 which says urgent. So I'm going to take one of these, which is message number 7, and ask for the full message to be printed out to me here.
Do it in haste in case you get dismissed.
And what it's going to do is to print out the day, the time of day, who it's from, and we'll have a look at the message. And it says urgent, it's organisation. And the message reads, I need your confirmation on proposed organisational changes as soon as possible. And also, a rather cheeky one, can you please call at one of our offices on your way back? Obviously, they want to use me as a messenger in some way.
Yes.
Now, I can reply to that by simply putting in an answer, an A, and say, the organisation, and I'm going to abbreviate it to org, looks okay. And I'm going to send that message, and it's as simple as pressing one of these buttons with one finger, and away we go.
But if you couldn't type, you couldn't do that. Now, half your senior executives can't type, and B, would regard it as being beneath their dignity.
Brian, I think that's a problem we've got to get over. We don't have to use all our fingers like a trained secretary in order to type. As you noticed how I did it, I was using 2 fingers for most of the time, and I think that once they've overcome that sort of problem, then they'll feel happy with the system.
But aren't they going to say, I might just as well pick up the phone and ask my secretary what's on?
Yes, but of course the problem is when their secretary isn't there, or when the people who they're trying to get aren't there, or, as in the case of many of our executives, they're on the road, they're abroad, or they're working from home.
So they could take the machine with them, and wherever there's a phone, plug themselves in?
Yes, no matter where they are.
And it will always answer?
Yes, it will always answer. The system works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, except for about half an hour each day.
Well, it's for the senior executives at BL. Will Sir Michael have one as well?
Well, I hope that he will, but we haven't approached him yet.
Plug up your courage and do that. Now, in this series, we've looked at the way the computer is affecting productivity and jobs in a wide range of industries, and at all levels, including, as we've just seen, top management. The pattern which is emerging, I think, is like this. First, jobs most affected are skilled and semi-skilled craft and clerical jobs. They are highly defined and therefore vulnerable. Secondly, if new technology is to be introduced painlessly, there has to be early constructive consultation and collaboration between those who want to put it in and those who have to use it. Thirdly, new technology tends to polarize jobs. There is a premium on jobs involving human contact and service, judgment and technical versatility, and at the other end of the scale, on manual work. Fourthly, because of the possibility of linking small and large computers, management has a real choice between more centralized information gathering and control and a more decentralized, more delegated, more open system with local managers having access to much more sophisticated information than before. Now, there's one further point. Is this new technology going to affect women's jobs more than men's? Well, here to help me answer the question is Deepak Nandi of the Equal Opportunities Commission. I know the Commission has done a report on this. I mean, do you think women are going to come off worse because of the new technology?
I think one starts, Brian, from the position that we're not faced with doomsday on the one hand, nor on the other hand with things roughly as they were before, but something fairly dramatic in between. I think the assumption one has to work with is that if you leave things to themselves, people who are already disadvantaged in the labour market are going to be even more disadvantaged. Now, if you look at the pattern of new technology that's being introduced and the kinds of jobs that are at risk, you'll find that because of the growth of women's jobs in the service sector, particularly in the last 15 or 20 years, if those are threatened, then automatically it follows that women stand to be more vulnerable as a result of unthought-out technological change.
In which particular jobs do you see them most at risk?
Well, you can easily imagine a scenario, but we have it in our report. You can have a manufacturing company in which clerical jobs diminish, sales jobs increase. Sales jobs are mainly men's jobs, clerical jobs are mainly women's jobs. Now, that's the kind of shift that's likely to take place unless one provides some mechanism for enabling men and women equally to have access to the new jobs created.
Now, does this mean women are going to have to learn skills that have either been denied them in the past or which they haven't bothered about?
Well, a bit of both. Firstly, they will certainly have to be given access to skill training of a kind which up to now has been thought to be the sorts of things that boys do at school. But over and beyond that, there's a rather more fundamental point, and that is that skills like a good grasp of grammar, a good grasp of the 3 R's, these, which over the last 20 years we have thought to be rather less important than previously, these are going to be absolutely critical skills for everybody, no matter at what level, if you're handling machinery of this kind.
But where do you see the impact being most felt? I mean, is it going to be in banking, insurance, all those sort of city kind of jobs that we think about?
Well, if you look at it, you'll be surprised at how many of the jobs, not just in service sector industries like the one you've outlined, how many of the jobs that we're now talking about in the BBC, in my own commission, are not concerned with making anything, they're concerned with processing information. And these are the jobs which are absolutely ready for the introduction of new technology.
In the end, won't the real problem be not who's going to get the jobs, but sort of persuading anyone to accept change? I mean, the adoption of the new technology is still the stumbling block.
Well, that is the central, the $64,000 question that I think we all face in this country and individually. There is a terrible fear, the fear of the black box with magic inside of it. And unless one can dispel that fear, there is absolutely no prospect of getting any workforce to accept new technology of this kind. And I ought to add that the fear is not just a matter of unskilled chaps on the shop floor not liking this new device. One of the effects of the introduction of new technology is that management have to think through the rationale of the job, you know, what sense it makes to do things in this way rather than that, and to be prepared to explain it step by step, as you were discussing earlier in the program. Now, this means that you can't have managers slacking about doing what they had done for the previous 30 years. The business of explaining to your workforce what is involved in the introduction of new technology means that you really got to learn it all over again. It starts from the top, goes right down to the bottom.
Thank you very much. Well, now that's it. In these programs, of course, we've been able only to scrape the surface of some of the issues raised for those who might be affected by new technology. If you feel you want to know more about computers and you would be interested in learning about the new world of personal computing, you might like to know that the BBC Computer Literacy Project is starting in January 1982. It will be a series of 10 programs with a linked microcomputer, a book, and a linked course in programming for complete beginners. I think you'll enjoy that. But from me, goodbye.